It's hard to engage our creativity as adults, isn't it? It was so much easier when we were kids. It seemed effortless. I remember the time when I was a kid, the teacher announced, talent show competition in 2 weeks. I sat up straighter, I was excited, I felt nervous and uncertain, but I also felt confident. I was gonna knock that talent show out of the park. I was gonna see everyone's jaws dropped in amazement. I was gonna use my creativity to build a connection with my classmates and my teacher. I didn't know what to do. I could play the piano. I could tell a speech. Meh. I could sing. Definitely not. Then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I was going to be a ventriloquist. I knew there was going to be no other kids in that talent show that were going to be doing a ventriloquism routine. And this is before the internet, so I kind of had to wing it. I was excited. The bus dropped me off at home, and I leapt off the bottom step, and I ran home to find Samantha. I finally found her under a dirty pile of clothes in my closet. She was my Cabbage Patch doll. We sat in front of that bathroom mirror for hours, building a performance we could be proud of. The day of the talent show came, I was fidgeting in that crisscross applesauce on the gym room floor. I was rehearsing the lines over and over again, worried I was going to forget something, maybe a little bit like today. And finally it was my turn. They called me up to the stage, and I run-walked like I was going on a water slide. And I got onto the stage, and I sat down with Samantha, and we started our performance. And everything fell away. It was just me and her in our creative flow. I finished my presentation, my performance, and I stood up, and I knew I'd nailed it. My skin was electric, my heart was full, and my smile was beaming. I was so happy to share my unique creativity with everybody else. What was your ventriloquism moment? Maybe it was last week, but I'm willing to bet that when you were a kid, you had a moment where you shared something very unique and special and creative about yourself to build a connection with other people. So, how many of you consider yourselves creative here? We've got 67% of people who are, did you all answer this question? All y'all? That's my favorite American expression, by the way, because I'm Canadian. All y'all, I love that. So I'll give you a minute to answer this question if you haven't already. Yeah, so in that way, this is kind of like a warm-up for the app. So we're going to use this app throughout the presentation, and hopefully we'll get some dialogue going and some questions and answers. And I like to use tools like this in my presentations because this is also maybe a new tool to some of you that you can take back and use in your presentations or your huddles or your group meetings to just kind of shake things up a little bit and dance in the discomfort, as Anne said this morning. So we got a lot of creative people here today. I'd say most of you feel like you're 3 to 5. There's very few that are not creative. But I'm hoping that today I'll move some of those 1s and 2s a little bit closer to 3 to the 5. So thank you for participating. We'll keep using that app as we go. Whenever I have a question, we'll be adding that to the question there. So it's so fun to just watch it in real time. But to kids, creativity is life. Kids are universally creative. In the 90s, Dr. George Land and his group were hired by NASA to build a creativity test. They wanted to know who was creative at NASA. So he built the test. And then he had a neat idea. Let's give it to kindergartners. So he gave thousands of kindergartners this test for creativity. And I'd like you to guess how many of you think, what percentage of kindergartners scored as creative genius on this test? So you can go back to your app, and the answers are either 2%, 19%, 38%, 79%, or 98%. So how many kindergartners that took this test were creative genius? We'll give you a few seconds to answer that question, and I'll reveal the answer. Dun, dun, dun. I got to point it at the... Yeah, 98% is right. 98% of kindergartners scored as creative genius on this test. You were all creative geniuses in kindergarten. I was a creative genius in kindergarten. Well, 2% of us were picking our nose and eating crayons, maybe. We know who we are. So kids are universally creative. To them, it's life. The problem with creativity is that we think it has to be something epic and artistic like Van Gogh or Beyonce. We don't really have a word in English to compare the things that we do every day to the things that are epically creative. Researchers call them big C or small c creativity. Big C creativity, the iPhone, the White Album by the Beatles, the Sistine Chapel, things that are celebrated by peers in their domain as incredibly creative. Small c or little c creativity are the things that you're already doing every day. You might just not call them creative. Things like choosing an outfit, making pretzels or bread during the pandemic, gardening, building a pivot table, drafting a break room hygiene plan for that one person that never cleans the dishwasher. And that's what I'm talking about what I'm talking about now is the everyday small c creativity, the things that you're already doing that you can double down on and do more of, and that will help you open up your brain for new possibilities. So, the elephant in the room, what is a veterinarian doing talking about creativity? I always get that. So you're a veterinarian and a comic, and you do talk about creativity. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my story, and maybe this resonates with some of your pasts as well. So ever since I can remember, I loved animals. I couldn't think of anything I wanted to do more than just spend my whole life taking care of them. I was on the fast track to being a veterinarian, so much so that when I was 12 years old, I was panicking that I didn't have enough vet experience for my vet school application, right? I was one of those type A's. Then I hit high school. And I developed a love for performance and improvisation and photography. And for the first time in my life, I felt unsure of my path. It was like I was standing on a mountain top with art on one side and science on the other, and I had to choose. I didn't think I had the talent to make a living as an actor. I had no idea how to be a cinematographer. And I still loved biology and science and animals. I don't regret choosing to pursue veterinary medicine, which is what I've been doing, and I still do, for 26 years. But through the grueling years of vet school and the many years thereafter, trying to look like I knew what I was doing still, they call it practicing for a reason, right? I felt like something was missing. You know, I started my career in small animal practice and emergency medicine, and I've been a locum tenens for most of my career. But I couldn't really find what I was looking for. I did zoo and wildlife work, and then I worked in research, and I worked in industry for technical services for a large pet food company. I had a few businesses. One of them was the recruiting business. And yes, I also have ADHD, if you haven't already figured that out. Late diagnosis. Makes sense, though. But looking back on those jobs, I realized that the thing that I loved in each of those jobs was using my creativity. Whether it was helping that one cat out of 4 lose the weight, you know, or building a presentation that was more interesting on the nutritional management of gastrointestinal diseases in the dog, or whether it was building a website for my business, that creativity really lifted me up and it gave me energy. And I thought, well, if that had happened to me, and then I started doubling down on that. So I started stand-up comedy, I started embracing my creativity. I've even taken some online painting classes. And I thought, if that's working for me, what about for other people? And because of my research background, and I still love the science and the data, I dove into the research on applied creativity. And I was blown away. And that's what I'm hoping to share with you, to inspire you to embrace your own unique style of creativity. But before I do that, I want to ask you, when Dr. Land gave those kindergartners the test, 98% of them were creative geniuses. So he gave the same test to thousands of adults. How many adults do you think scored that same high level of creative genius as the kindergartners? So you can go back to your app and answer. It's either 2, 19, 38, 79, or 98% of adults scored as creative geniuses. Give you another 10 seconds to answer that question. Survey says 19%. I don't know how I'm supposed to scroll. See, this is the discomfort of learning. I don't know how I'm supposed to scroll down. But the answer, no, that's not what I meant to do. Okay. Anyway, it's on there. Sorry, I just can't see. 2%. of adults scored at the same genius level creative as the kindergartners. So what happened? We all started out as creative geniuses, but only 2% of us are creative as adults? Was it the people who are picking their nose and eating the crayons, maybe? I think so. Don't feel bad. If we stayed as clueless as a kindergartner, we would not have survived. If we had to think of a new way to build fire or run away from a saber-toothed tiger, we'd still be living in caves with dial-up internet. Nobody wants to go back there. We make shortcuts, heuristics, and assumptions about the way the world works, and that's what's helped us survive. But it's limited our idea to see outside of the boundaries of what we think we know for sure. And that's part of being creative. So Dr. George Land proved that we are all creative. We have the capacity to be creative. We've kind of lost it as adults. But why should we bother? So for the scientists in the room, there's a little, it's not going to be a squiggly line like Anne had this morning. But through my experience and my research, there's 4 main areas that everyday creativity can help. Number 1 is well-being. Study after study of peer-reviewed articles on engaging everyday creativity in nurses, bankers, engineers proves that by engaging your creativity, something as simple as making a meal or knitting makes you feel happier. Okay, I'm done. Isn't that enough, right? Isn't that enough? The second thing it does is highly correlated with resilience. If you think about it, whether you're doing anything creative, whether you're going to throw some spices in a meal, or whether you're going to try and paint something on a canvas, you don't know how it's going to work out. You're stepping into that space of not knowing with a high, in my case with painting, high possibility of failure, but with the willingness to continue and get up and move on. Isn't that like literally the definition of resilience? And in studies, especially out of the University of Queensland, it's highly correlated with creativity. I still haven't seen a causal study, and as a scientist person, I'm like, correlation doesn't equal causation. But resilience and creativity are highly, highly correlated. Innovation, duh. Do I really need to say, like creativity and innovation? You need to think differently if you want to find a different approach. And then the last dimension, for some of you might not have heard of this, is called tolerance of ambiguity. There's a lot of research around tolerance of ambiguity. Sometimes it's called uncertainty tolerance, which is a little bit different. But what they find in physicians who have a high tolerance of ambiguity, they're happier. They are less prone to overdiagnosis and running down rabbit holes to try to chase that exact certainty. A person who's tolerant of ambiguity is okay with not knowing exactly how things are going to work out. Some of this is predicated by your personality, but you can influence your tolerance of ambiguity. And guess what it's highly correlated with? Creativity. Thank you. Yes. And if you have a high tolerance of ambiguity, you have higher emotional intelligence, you have better leadership, better job satisfaction and performance, and your teamwork is better because you're leading them through uncertainty in a more confident way. Those are the 4 main benefits to the individual. So I would love to know which benefits are most important to you. Are you most interested in well-being, in innovation, in problem solving, or in this dimension of tolerance of ambiguity? Help me kind of know where to focus my attention. Well-being and happiness is definitely leading the pack. A little bit of leadership and team engagement. Give it a minute. I don't know how long it takes to it should do it in real time. But from this, I'm seeing well-being, happiness, leadership and team engagement, a little bit of innovation, a little bit of tolerance of ambiguity. We're going to touch on all of those anyway. And for leadership and team engagement, I'm doing a session at 3 o'clock today where we're going to actually do some exercises. Okay. Oh. So creativity improves our happiness. Actually, the next day, and one recent study found that if you do something today that's creative, you actually feel happier tomorrow. Increases your positive effect. And guess what? When you're happier, you do more creative things. It's this like an infinite, delicious donut of happiness.